Kwazulu-Natal, the Durban University of Technology and the Mangosuthu University of Technology. Students are protesting over issues relating to previous debt, NSFAS applications and accommodation. In Johannesburg, Wits University Students' Representative Council has vowed to disrupt all academic activities, also over accommodation and registration-related issues. Higher Education Minister Naledi Pandor has appealed to student organizations to make every effort to resolve problems without disrupting the academic program. And on the story now, we're joined on the line by Department of Higher Education and Training's Media Liaison Officer, Lunga Ngqengelele. Lunga, a very good morning to you. Are you able to hear us in Joburg?
Definitely, I can hear you, sis, and good morning to the viewers of SABC.
Thanks for making the time. Tell us, are you concerned as the department about these disruptions?
Definitely. Minister Naledi Pandor issued a statement last night, of course, expressing her concern regarding this ongoing protest by the students, and hopefully that hoping that the management of the institutions, together with the councils as well as with the student leadership, they will be able to find each other so that there isn't too much disruption of the opening of institutions. As you would know, that yesterday was the first day of the university.
That call by the ministers to student organizations to exhaust issues sufficiently with management before disrupting the academic program. As you look at the list of demands by the students, which demands do you think are valid and which ones can require further conversation?
Maybe it's important to say that as the Department of Higher Education and Training, together with the university management, student leadership, for the better part of last year, we were having meetings in which we were planning for the smooth opening of 2019. There were a number of issues that were raised by the students regarding the, for instance, NSFAS and the issues of student accommodation and so on. It was put to them that there is a lot of improvement that the government has done in those regards, but we cannot be in a position to accommodate all students. So these are matters that we are continuing to negotiate with them. Where we find extra resources, they are always pumped into making sure that more students get into accommodation and more students from poor and working class backgrounds get supported by the state to be able to acquire their education. For instance, if I'm looking at some of the demands where the students are saying that even students that are doing post-grad must be supported by the state. Currently, we are not at a level where we can be able as government to support those. This is why the focus is just on those who are entering the institutions of higher learning for the first time. And we have thousands and thousands of them as it is at the moment with the resources. We are not able to accommodate all of them. So those are points that we are negotiating. We are putting our cards on the table in terms of saying that this is how much money we are getting and this is how much we are using for the students. So all the issues I think that are being raised by the students are issues that can be discussed. And this is why Minister is asking that rather than to burning down the institutions, burning down the cars, students must find in them to go back and negotiate with the management. And the Minister has said that the Director General of the department stands ready to intervene where it is necessary that the management and the student leadership are not finding each other.
Outside of interacting with the stakeholders, being the institution management and the tertiary students, what is the Department of Higher Education doing? These are mostly predictable situations when it relates to the beginning of the academic year. What sort of programs does the department have in place?
In fact, it shouldn't be predictable that every beginning of the year there will be burning down of the buildings. What we do in terms of making sure that students, these do not happen, we try to plan far ahead of time. For instance, by this time we would already be starting with our enrollment plans for next year, because you will remember that we have limited institutions of higher learning in South Africa that can accommodate a specific number of the students. It is important that you keep to those numbers, because you run a risk of then having the institutions being vandalized if they accommodate more than they can in terms of the infrastructure. So we take into account all of those plans. This is why, for instance, we would ask students that are in schools at the moment doing matric to apply on time, so that by come January or the beginning of each financial year, student academic year, we know how many numbers are there, and also students that qualify are already taken into account. But we still find some of them not applying, leaving it to chance. Come next year, they go to institutions and insist that they get enrolled when we can't accommodate in terms of the plans that we have developed. So it's part of planning, and in this planning, Minister has always said that her office is open in terms of both the suggestions and just discussions on number of issues that affect the students. Because her interest is to see that all students receive quality education and are able to pass within the record time, so that they can go and contribute to the economy or development of the economy of South Africa.
Lunga, it's all good and well to make these calls for students to behave in a certain way, but we've determined over time that it does not happen. Do you have a comprehensive response to this?
And of course, on issues that are related to criminality, we have to work with the law enforcement agencies to avoid loss of life and so on. So in that regard, we really rely on law enforcement agencies to assist us, because in all of this, no amount of disagreement we should have that leads to this destruction of property we are seeing. So the Minister of Higher Education has condemned that. But of course, we do believe as government that all solutions lie in discussions, in negotiations. This is why from our end we are always asking students to find other means in terms of voicing their concerns, and we are even urging the leadership of the institutions, the management, the council, to listen to the student and find amicable solutions. And if that fails, then as the department, as we did with the UNISA situation at the beginning of this year, we are stand ready to intervene and be able to make sure that the students and the leadership find each other. We do this in the interest of making sure that quality of higher education in South Africa is not compromised, because every day that is lost is actually a loss for South Africa in general, in terms of making sure that students are able to pass on time and are able to contribute meaningfully to the South African economy.
Just a quick one, Lunga. The department spent most of last year really trying to have negotiations about sorting out issues at NSFAS, especially with the departure of their CEO, Mr. Sizwe Nqasana, and also trying to reconfigure the process of giving out free education and changing the way it looks as opposed to what it was when it was initially introduced by former President Jacob Zuma. What's the latest there?
In fact, in terms of the numbers that we are getting from NSFAS, they speak for themselves. Over 300,000 by January this year had already been confirmed to receive allocations from NSFAS. The NSFAS has opened up a process where if there are students that have been rejected, they can appeal, and that process is continuing. So there has been a huge improvement since Minister appointed Dr. Randall Carlson as the administrator. Some of the challenges, and especially those that relate to systemic challenges, are being dealt with. So we are at a stage where we are thinking that NSFAS is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. And they continue speaking to the leadership and provide these responses to them. Minister, in addition, if I can just mention, if there are still challenges that relate to NSFAS in particular, she has already spoken to Dr. Carlson to make sure that he's got a team that is able to respond speedily to all these queries that are being raised by the student. And Minister has received assurance that that is being done, and that's why we are sort of trying to understand what exactly is behind what the students are raising.
The tone, your tone, Lunga, almost says that we've got this all under control. But as we're speaking to you now, we're showing footage from yesterday, cars being burnt, buildings being vandalized. What is the department going to do to ensure that this doesn't happen again?
Look, my tone is because of the assurance I have from the plans that we have put in place. And the point I'm also making is that we are trying to understand if there's more to this, because really we think we had gotten to a point where we had a clear understanding amongst all the stakeholders in terms of what will happen this year. But going forward, of course, we have deployed a number of senior management from the department to institutions so that they can assist and quell this as soon as possible by making sure that if there are things that we can do immediately in terms of responding to the challenges that are being raised by the students, we are able to do that. And also we open clear communication lines with the student leadership so that we don't see them really burning down the buildings and the cars as we see at the moment. So we hope they will give us that space as the Department of Higher Education to assist in terms of making sure that there is a common ground between the management and them. That's the role we are playing. As I'm speaking to you, a number of my colleagues are in the universities trying to facilitate that discussion between the student and the management.
Thank you so much. From the Department of Education, they're speaking to us, Mr. Lunga Ngqengelele.